What's good, everyone? This is a 1-hour recording that I did together with my good friend Davie Fogarty from the Oodie. So we've had the pleasure of working together on a couple of projects over the past couple of years, and what we did was host a 1-hour masterclass for his mentoring program on Daily Mentor for his students, where we talked about the importance of conversion optimization, and we also broke it down into different steps, right? So we saw for different growth stages of a brand, let's say like 6 figures a month, 7 figures a month, multiple $1 million a month, the importance of CRO changes. And there's also different aspects of conversion optimization, such as offer optimization, landing pages, sales funnels, and then really split testing. And you need to focus on different aspects of CRO and different steps on your journey as an e-commerce brand. So this is everything we share in this 1-hour conversation. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know if there's any other questions or topics you want me to cover. Just put it in the comment section down below, and then I'm going to record a video about that. So peace out and enjoy.
I'm here with Carl. Carl, did you want to introduce yourself and explain, why we're chatting?
Yeah, for sure. Hey everyone, pleasure to meet all of you. So my name is Carl. Basically been working in the CRO space for the past couple of years. Had the pleasure to meet Davie in person, spent some time, I think like 2 years ago, like on the dot exactly was when we like first met on the mastermind from our mutual friend, Nick Shackelford. And then we've had the pleasure to work on like different projects over the past couple of years. And I really value him, really look up to him. And for me, just always been super interested in the field of psychology and the field of marketing. So basically what I'm doing all day long is obsessed with how we can get more people to convert on websites. And that's basically what we do at Accelerated. Build a team of like 40 people over the past couple of years. And now we work with a lot of really interesting brands all across the world. Basically every niche you can imagine, from like fashion to supplements to whatever it may be. And super excited for the call. We're going to talk a lot about like CRO, landing pages, split testing, and all of that good stuff. And super excited for it.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I think when we called out, it was very different. Like both of our situations was very different. It's a testament to what you can achieve through hard work, because now you're just like probably one of the leaders in the space, especially a space that is very misunderstood. And don't, for context, you know this, but everyone in Daily Mentor is doing over $1 million, some up to $50 million. Surprisingly, when I started Daily Mentor, I was like, this is, everyone will be doing CRO. But it wasn't the case. People really just didn't quite understand it. They were doing a lot of design, trying to optimize in certain ways, but they weren't doing rigorous split tests. They also weren't really taking risks in different formats, such as VSLs, advertorials, all of that kind of other practice. I thought was because of the community that we kind of were in, we were seeing a lot of it. But a lot of these people that are getting very new to CRO, which is really exciting because it's such a good space. So maybe let's walk through and qualify what you would see. What would you look for in a brand that is ready for CRO? Like what milestones do they need to be hitting to start implementing?
Yeah, really good question. And I really like you pointing that out, because also from the way that I view it, there's like different stages in terms of brand growth, and then also different ways in which you should put energy into CRO, right? So for example, so the way that I view it is from like, let's say like 0 to like 200K a month, then like 200K a month to like $1 million a month, and then $1 million a month plus, right? In terms of like monthly revenue. So in the early stages, to really get it up from the ground, let's say like 0 to 200K, for me, it's really about like finding product market fit and making sure that you ramp up paid acquisition channels, right? I see a lot of guys asking me like, hey, what should I do? I'm doing like 10K a month. Should I do on my product page? I'm like, no, you should focus all of your time and energy into finding out what creatives work for you, what channels work for you, and what offers work for you, right? So in the early stages, I would focus all of the energy and the resources on finding a solid product market fit in terms of an offer that you can push on different acquisition channels and that you have like a bunch of creators for, right? That gives you this initial scale. Once you hit like 100K a month, 200K a month, depends a bit. in terms of how solid your conversion rates are. We sometimes saw people that didn't touch the store until they made like 500K a month or even $1 million a month, right? Just because their offer and their creative structure was performed so well. And that was also really interesting for me to see. So as soon as you see like conversion rates like struggle or average order value struggle, I would then go about playing around with landing pages or like advertorials, as you mentioned, right? Like bigger, basically out of the park changes that you can do in terms of the whole funnel structure. I would still have like a pretty high level view of the funnel in terms of big ideas, right? Like what page do we show to the user first, or like what flow of pages do we push the user through? So that's what I would focus on in the early stages. And then at around like 500K, 600K a month, I see like the value in starting to putting the resources and energy into split testing like smaller stuff, right? Where it's like you've validated a certain funnel, or you may even validated like a couple of funnels that work really well. And now due to the amount of volume and the amount of data, it really makes sense for you to start split testing, right? Because even if you then only increase conversions with like each split test by like 2% or 5% or 10%, that then still translate into a solid absolute number in terms of additional revenue that you're going to achieve. When if you're doing like 20K a month and then you increase conversions by 10%, that's still good, but that's only like 2,000 in additional revenue, right? So those are kind of like the stages that I like to point out. So stage 1, focus on offer, channels, creative. Stage 2, play around with landing pages and advertorials. And then stage 3, start focusing on the smaller nitty gritty stuff and start with split testing.
I love that, moving the needle first through big, also through offers as well, editorials, offers, these are the big needle movers. Maybe let's break the next question down into 2 parts, because once you've qualified, okay, this is the next step for me, which might be small changes, or it might be the editorial side of things. What are the next steps to decide what to test? So maybe start with the big stuff. What's kind of process? Naturally you could hire an agency. If not, I guess you've got it in-house, or you've got hire other people. Like, run us through what you kind of see at that stage. What's the you?
Yeah, good question. So I would say that it's a bit based on like you as the founder, right? And like your internal team structure that you have. If you have this natural understanding of marketing and consumer psychology and setting up all of that, it's going to flow easier for you, right? Then you have a better understanding of like pumping out new angles for creatives, or new landing pages, or new offers, or like iterations in terms of let's come up with 3 different value propositions on this landing page, right? Meaning it would not take like a massive amount of time for you to like get into the field of CRO, just because it then is going to come more naturally to you, and then you can basically delegate it really quickly to like your internal team, or just hire like 1 or 2 people to execute certain split tests, right? So I would say it's like difficult to answer in general. I would say it's more based on like the founder and internal team structure and like the resources you have in-house. If you already have a solid designer, if you already have a solid copywriter, and you may just need a developer, for example, to like set up those tests and then execute them, then it's really easy for you to go on Fiverr or Upwork and find a solid developer, and then you as the founder giving you input and like the bigger picture and roadmap to execute that. If you don't have the basically like the natural understanding of all of the marketing and the consumer psychology, and then you also may not have like that solid of a in-house team, then it's going to be a bit more difficult for you, right? Because you're going to spend way more resources and energy and time getting into this field and understanding that field. So that's basically like the first analysis I would do of your current situation, to then decide how you're going to execute on that. The one thing that I'm going to say is that you should start thinking about this probably when you hit around like 500K in monthly revenue, in terms of what am I going to do in terms of conversion optimization, how am I going to execute those split tests, And then the more you scale up, the more important this decision and the execution is going to become, simply because the return is going to become bigger and bigger, right? And with every decision in business, I like to view it as a ROI decision, right? Like, how much ROI am I getting out of putting my energy, whether that's like money or time or something else, into something, and how quickly am I getting a solid ROI out of that? So that's basically the first thing that I would decide on.
I think that makes sense. One, I would love your thoughts around the main challenge that I see for everyone listening, which is and again, it lends itself to like, what type of founder are you? If you kind of came from the performance background, the ideation stage of CRO, like, what do I even test, comes naturally. And part of that is because you pretty much just going to competitors or like people that you really respect within the industry that you know are optimized for tea, and you're kind of just grabbing those ideas from there. If they don't have that ideation stage, really that ability to create those ideas, what would you kind of advise for that person? Do they need to just buckle down and just at least give it a shot? Or is it more like, all right, no, let's hire an agency or someone for that stage?
I mean, I would definitely give it a shot in China first, with either free resources that you can find online, right? Like, so I'm giving Davie's on my YouTube channel, or even it's called Winning Tests, right? Where you support with the testing ideas.
Yeah.
For example, like Winning Tests is a great way, just because basically it's helping you in the beginning to show like what is an A/B test and like what can you test, right? Whether you get those from like my YouTube videos or from Winning Tests or something else, like basically somebody showing this to you, somebody handing this to you on a silver platter to get the ball rolling. Because with like everything in business, if somebody is showing it a bit to you or does it together with you, then it's going to be way quicker and way easier for you, right? So I would still give it a shot in the beginning, because also then if you decide to delegate it or to outsource it to an external agency, you're going to have a better understanding of what they're doing, right? And this is also like one of my mental frameworks, that I want to have like at least like a solid understanding. I don't need to be an expert in it before I outsource it, just so I can kind of manage what they're doing. Right? So I would still prefer to have some form of understanding of like how all of this works before I'm going to outsource it.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's why I created Winning Tests, because, well, actually, the reason why I created Winning Tests is because both the ideation stage and design stage seem challenging for these brands at this size. Like, it's never going to be a big business because the small businesses can't afford something like that. And then the really big businesses will just hire the designer themselves. So, but it's just trying to facilitate this size of business. If, let's say, they have, had one or two Winning Tests and sent across, and they're like, no, I like this ball's rolling, I now need to hire my own designer. What are your tips to find those people? Because sometimes Upwork is pretty challenging. Like, are you just cycling through a fair few of the designers, getting them to come up with the conversion rate optimization ideas and producing the Figma files? Like, run us through that process, probably for your agency.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I would always, for like any position that I'm going to hire, ask my question, like, what is my expectation and like, what is my desired output from this position, right? Of course, you can hire basically anyone nowadays on Fiverr for like $5 an hour, $2 an hour, or something crazy from like India or the Philippines or whatnot. I would always focus, especially for those crucial roles like CRO or even creatives, right? Focus on somebody that has an understanding of marketing, of CRO design, right? Because design isn't design and marketing isn't marketing. It's like you want somebody with experience in this field, because it's so easy nowadays with like all of the templates to design something that looks good or that has a nice aesthetic, right? Like there's hundreds of Shopify templates that allow you to do that yourself nowadays. So for us, we always like to headhunt from either other big agencies or from solid e-commerce brands, right? Like there's so many amazing talent places like About You or Zalando or Amazon or Nike, right? Like a lot of these like big companies where they have like really solid talent that you can headhunt for your brand. And then also when you hire them, you want to make sure that they have an understanding of designing something that's optimized for conversions, right? That doesn't just look good, but they actually have an understanding of what does the website need to look like, or what does the landing page need to look like to be persuasive and to convert. So this is always what I would focus on. So not just a regular UX UI designer, but actually somebody with the understanding of how do I need to design it? How do I need to position it? How do I need to build the flow of the landing page? So it's like really easy to go through and doesn't have a lot of friction. And that's basically how I would go about it. So for our team, like any designer we hire, like they have a also psychology background or understanding of that, know how to do something that works, right? Not just like make it look pretty.
Is there any interview questions or tasks, trial tasks that you're giving these designers to make sure that they're not just creating pretty things, but things that convert?
Yeah, so basically, just quickly for you guys to understand, like we've basically like separated the process into like different stages. First, it's like data analysis, then we have like a consumer conversion specialist, and then we have a designer. So this is basically the stages that we go through. So basically some person to just solely look at data, some person who's like the expert in consumer psychology and copywriting, and then the designer. So basically one person analyzes data, the second person coming up with the idea, and the third person bringing that to life. So in the those stages, what I would ask, or like what task we give them, is that we give them like a wireframe or like a certain idea, and we want them to bring it to life, right? So we have a couple of sections. So we, for example, give them a website, and then we say, hey, this is what we don't like about the current website, and this is what we would want the new website to look like. Please execute on this, right? And then also we sometimes give them something that doesn't convert that well, and then we ask them to propose something, right? Like, how would you redesign this, or what would be your proposed solution to this be, to make it easier? And something that you can do, which is going to get the point across, is ask them about stuff where it's naturally occurring friction, right? Something like a bundle builder or like a customization or something like that, right? Where people have to take an action on the website to decide for the color, or to put together like a bundle, or to customize like furniture, interior design, or something like that. Because if the designer takes this task and masters it, you know, they have an understanding of like how the user actually goes through that, right? That's like the most important thing, that they understand what this is going to do with the user and how it's going to help them go through it easier, or persuade them more.
That's insanely practical tips. Thanks for sharing that. This is like everyone's main question, but and I'm sure it's changing, but like, what are the main tools that you're using for Shopify brands at the moment to split test? And, you know, if you transition from one to the other, why is that the case?
Yeah. So we've pretty much had the same setup for the past couple of years, which is like a pretty basic setup that you can use with like any store almost, right? And it also builds on the foundation that I think every store should have, which is first of all, Google Tag Manager, which is basically just a tool that lets you set certain triggers on your page, right? Like the tool that decides which data is being collected. Think of it as something where you go through your website and you say, hey, I want to measure clicks on this button. I want to measure who looks at the menu. I want to measure how far they scroll down the page. I want to measure how much time they spend. So Google Tag Manager is basically the tool where you can decide what data is being collected. Then Google Analytics. Google Analytics is basically the data storage and the tool that lets you analyze the data and like separate the data and clean the data. So those two are the must-haves for data. Another tool that we really like is Microsoft Clarity. It's a free tool where you get session recordings, heat maps, click maps, and all of that. So pretty visual data, which is super, super helpful. And especially the session recordings are super helpful because you can basically experience how the user navigates through your website, where they click, how they buy, what sections they scroll through, and what content they consume. So this is pretty much the tech stack to like collect data and analyze data. For split testing, we have basically used a bunch of different tools from like Google Optimize to Chameleon to VW and what they're all called. Now we've just been working on like an own solution basically that we can use for split testing. But pretty much for split testing, it's sad that Google Optimize sunsetted, right?
Envious.
Yeah, because it was free, it was so easy to use. It was in the Google ecosystem with Analytics and Tag Manager. But for you guys, if you want to get the ball rolling in the beginning, like most of the tools, at least in the early stages, are like pretty similar. Then I would just more focus on like them having a nice visual editor or making it easy for you to set up the A/B test. Down the line, if you're doing a couple of million a month and like the small nitty-gritty details of the tool matter, then it's a different thing. But in the beginning, I would more focus on the tool making it easy for you basically to like run the split test. But in theory, if you would have like a pretty sufficient understanding, you could even run a split test just with Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics. So like the tool is basically just making it easy for you to run it. But like every single tool is based on like Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager to like split the sessions and collect and store the data.
That makes sense. I think a lot of people are using IntelliGems now. I'm not sure if you've had experience with that. We use visually.io, as I was mentioning, in our WhatsApp for Oodie because we find that can do personalization and I'm going to do a couple of videos on how we actually use that. Have you had any experience with just like, I love your advice on that it just doesn't really matter aside from, just making it easy and frictionless. The only other thing that I like there is speed. If it does cause speed issues, that can affect performance, but they're all pretty good with speed now as well. They all know that that's kind of like a deal breaker. But to my question, like, have you had an experience with just like not setting, I don't know how to, I've never used IntelliGems, but like just pretty much just installing that app and just going rather than just setting up whole tag manager or Google Analytics? Have you had any experience there?
No, I haven't heard of IntelliGems.
Okay, cool. Worth checking out. I think a lot of people are starting to do it.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I'm keen to hear more about your solution as well. That sounds sick. Sweet. We touched on landing pages and tutorials. I think anything else to add on that one? I had that written down. We kind of already touched on it. Like, what do you thought about tutorials? I think we've touched that.
I said a couple of questions in the chat, like one relating to the landing page and advertorials one, if you just want me to go through them.
Yeah.
So Fraser asked about like what page builder softwares you use. I'm a big fan of Replo. I'm gonna put it in the chat too, just because they have so many like templates of like big brands. They basically scrape through like Javy, through AG1, through like any big brand that you can imagine. I'm sure they have even an Oodie template too. So basically making it super easy for you to like build an advertorial, build a landing page, build a product page or something. And it's a Shopify based app. So they have basically just been developing everything for Shopify, making it super easy for you to use. Generally regarding this whole conversation around like tools, software and stuff, what I've seen over the past year is that every software provider, at least like the big ones, they are moving super quickly and they are pumping out updates super quickly. So I almost feel like the big providers are becoming pretty similar in terms of what they offer you, right? It has been like a really big competitive advantage, like a couple of years ago, if you know like the right software and like what to use. I feel like nowadays the big companies, they all like copy each other really quickly and they progress really quickly. So it becomes like less and less relevant. But Replo is still a pretty great one to just get the ball rolling quickly.
Probably because Google Optimize sunsetted a bunch of money into this space. And it's why there was like 3 tools just because it was like, why bother? Which is interesting. I'll keep going through ours. We've touched on in-housing CRO as well. Do you want to touch on anything else from a in-housing perspective? One thing that's probably worth touching on is, sure, I thought it was crystal clear, at what revenue levels, can you hire certain roles like full-time in your opinion? Obviously it's going to be super dependent on your P&L, but like one thing we did wrong at the Oodie was at a certain size, we hired a CRO manager and we hired a landing page designer, developer. We hired each copywriter, and we hired each individual role similar to like an agency, because it is like a fragmented kind of very easy role to push down the project management board. But because we probably didn't have a P&L to support it at that time and didn't have the organization across the teams, it got very complicated and progress stopped. It was really, really slowed down, because one way to make things very, very quick in a fast-growing organization is single-person roles. At the time we hired Mustang, who you respect quite highly, and he was able to really encompass the ideation stage, really manage the designers, really kind of take the whole picture and progress it like that. Would you be looking for more like an all-rounder like that? Have you seen that work at a lot of other organizations? And what are some other kind of key milestones where you're like, right, no, you really do need to hire single roles for this? If that makes sense.
Great question. I mean, I'm obviously a bit biased regarding the whole conversation, so I would take it with like a grain of salt, so rely on Davie's input there. But just from like what I've experienced and what my hypothesis is around this whole conversation of like the growth stages, agency in-house, that in the beginning, so let's say like everything from 100K a month to like 1 million a month in revenue. I think that if you have one rock star in-house marketer, like a CMO, head of media buying or something like that, like head of paid, has a really good understanding of marketing and copywriting, I think that single person with like one developer can take over like the CRO for you in-house in terms of running like the big tasks, in terms of pumping out a new landing page, new funnel really quickly, in terms of coming up with like solid changes, just because in those stages the big changes matter, like new offer, new copywriting, new angle. So we have seen brands do really well if they have like one rock star, which is this like all-in-one, right? We can basically execute on that. I would even say that in the early stages, you can just like use one designer for a couple of things. Like you can, if you have like somebody in-house who does creative design, for example, you could also use them for like the web design, just because in the beginning, the copywriting and the all of the other stuff is going to be way more important than having like pixel perfect design, right? That's going to be becoming more and more important as soon as you become like a real brand and as soon as you like scale, right? Just because then like all of those fine details matter. So my hypothesis is until like 1 million a month, one really solid in-house person. I think at around this like 1 million a month, it kind of switches from the business case perspective of where you put your money, right? Because like an in-house team is probably going to cost you like 25, 30K, depending on your location, where you hire, what seniority level you hire, and like how you build a team. And if you don't have those roles already, then that's a pretty solid spec on your P&L, right? If you have like 25, 30K on that. Agencies, depending on which agency, which freelancer you go for, are going to be somewhere between like 7 to like 15K probably, which do the same thing, right? So, and which also have like the background, the experience, and like all of the processes. So they're going to go through that really quickly. So that's why my hypothesis is from like 1 million a month to around like 4-5 million a month. The business case from like having an agency that's cheaper than an in-house team, and that's that like gets the ball rolling quicker and just can like progress quicker, is going to make more sense than having an in-house team. But as soon as you're going to be somewhere between like 4 to 5 million a month, then you probably already hired a bunch of in-house people for like other departments either way. And then it's going to be easier for you to hire the roles you need to then have a CRO team, and B, from like the money invest and the ROI that you're going to have, it makes sense for you to like spend the 25-30K in-house rather than like the 10-15K external, just because at some point like the pendulum swings into the different direction, where like the in-house team is going to then outperform the agency just because they're going to then run like more tests, pump out more landing pages and everything. That's my hypothesis, and that's like what like how I advise brands.
Agree. Let's jump to Oliver and Fernandez's question, because they're quite good. What do you think about testing during big sale events? How would you ensure confidence in the data?
It's a bit based on like how big your sale event is. We are really big believers in running tests during sale events. We do it for like all of the brands you work with during big events. So especially Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then also for certain brands like supplement brands, for example, they are in like early Q1, they have a bunch of sales, right? Just because everyone after New Year's, they want to like lose weight and stuff. Sometimes everything you gift, like jewelry, sometimes fashion, they have big events on like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and all of that. If it's like a really big sale event with a bunch of traffic, we always set up multi-arm banded test, meaning you have like 3 or 4 different variations instead of just one, right? A regular A/B test, you have like the current page and then like one variation. With like a multi-arm banded test, you basically have like the current and then you have like 3 to 4 different variations. And this works especially well for sales, because then you can test around, let's say like the like discount tiers, for example. Discount tiers is a great one. Or like gifts you give them, or like upsells you give them, or something like that, right? So that works really, really well during big sale events. In terms of the statistical significance and all of that, that's why I said it's based on how much traffic you push to the page. For the brands that we have, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they spend like multi-6 figures a day during those days. So they have a lot of traffic, and that makes a lot of sense to then have multiple variants. Yeah, it can make a difference from like 10 to 20% during those events.
It sounded like a lot of those tests are around the offer for the sale itself. Because that makes sense. When are you going to get a period when you can do that? You can test all the boring stuff at a later day. Is that a fair assumption? You're just kind of testing different types of offers, or do you kind of prioritize other types of tests as well?
I mean, offers is one thing that we test during that. Another one we really like to test is everything around like scarcity and urgency, right? Just because it makes sense during the sale event. Something like, hey, we have 100 people who are checking out the same product right now. We only have to save for another 3 hours. We have like big fat announcement bars, like crazy sale going on, something like that. So everything that's kind of playing into pushing them to convert quicker. We also really like testing that. And sometimes like the third big thing is just like testing different landing pages, right? So for example, we did that like 2 years ago for like a apparel and like sneaker brand, where we had like custom Black Friday, Cyber Monday landing pages, where it's like Black Friday sale, and then it's like a somewhat like a collection page. So you would have a couple of products, and then you would have like another section that's building trust, couple of products, right? And then we tested that against like the regular collection page. So those tests can also make sense in terms of, let's say, like customer journey flow during the sale event.
And in terms of the confidence in the data, one thing that's always confused me with that process is because a lot of Facebook ads are talking about different offers. So if you're doing a logo on one offer as a split test versus like a 35% off, is the Facebook going to heavily skew to that, or do you need to be really careful about what is pushing where to make sure that that doesn't cause issues and you get wires crossed? Does that make sense?
What's the problem with Facebook?
Well, if all of your emails are talking about a BOGO, and then you're pushing into the website, and the website saying 35% off, which I don't think you would kind of do. Like you need a kind of project manager to make that not happen, I assume. It's just the traffic sources you kind of match the office split test as well. You can't always do that and control who that can see it. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah. So there was more around like discount tiers. So for example, let's say skincare brand, they have a bunch of like bundles, bunch of different products, then testing around like what discount tiers you give or you show them on the collection page. If you tell them, hey, with 4 products, you get like 20% off, or you get like $30 off or something like that. Because otherwise you're going to run into the problem you've just mentioned, where it's like a problem between matching the communication from the ads and from the emails to the website.
Yeah, for sure. The Maze asks, do you run AA testing? And if so, how often? You're currently running one with some wild variants.
We typically just run one AA test.
Clarify what AA testing is for people that don't know.
So an AA test is setting up a test where you don't change anything to validate that your A/B testing tool works and that the data collection works, right? Because the most important thing with this whole split testing process is that the data collection is done correctly and that the data is clean, right? Because otherwise you have skewed data and you make wrong decisions, and that's fatal. So an AA test is basically, after you set up everything, you set up a test where you basically send 50% to the page like it is, and then you duplicate the page, and then you send 50% to the other one, but you actually don't change anything. So in theory, every KPI should be the same in terms of conversion rate, average order value, and revenue for those 2 pages. And you basically just do that once in the beginning to validate that the separation of users and the data collection is set up correctly. And you can basically use that to figure out if everything has been set up properly, or if you have like mistakes or errors in your tracking. So if you have like wide variance or like completely different metrics, then you probably have an error somewhere in the setup of your tracking of the A/B testing tool.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would your next steps then be? Just like just assume maybe that it is the tool and change the tool initially. If you're using something, out of the box on Shopify, or should we contact support? Like, what would your next steps be?
So 1, I would audit the tracking setup with Google Analytics, and 2, if that doesn't change anything, then I would probably switch the tool.
Yeah, cool. Agreed. I want to chat about the agency side. For context, everybody, I had used 4, 5 agencies, CRO agencies prior to meeting Carl, and I was pretty over it. And then we brought on Carl for one of our brands, and he just blew me away. And the reason why he blew me away is because of the speed and velocity that they were actually aiming to roll out tests. A lot of for anyone that's used the CRO agency will totally agree with me. It's just like for 1.5 months, they're like using screen recordings, they're doing surveys. It's just absolutely, and they're just talking a big game and nothing gets done. Nothing gets pushed forward, which makes sense in theory because they might have liked to be commercial business as well. But I thought one thing that you got, Carl, was like, you just need to get some moves. Like 1 month in our business is huge. Like it might be a 2-year-old business. Like it needs to move. So that's definitely something that I respected about you. I'm not sure if you've kind of changed how you approach that, considering working with much bigger brands. But if anyone does want an intro to Carl, just hit me up and I'll intro you to him. But that kind of leads us into the question of like, what is the main benefit of using an agency, and how do you go the right one? Because some of the brands obviously can't afford you as well. So just giving some advice there.
First of all, really appreciate the kind words coming from you. Second, I think in terms of finding a solid partner, and I would also try to make this as unbiased as possible. If let's say I'm looking for a partner, right? I've also hired a bunch of agencies for like content or media buying or events or whatever it is. I'm always looking for a person who has a really solid track record, right? Like a really solid track record, really solid cases and testimonials. are solid and that they can prove, right? Because I've also seen like a lot of agencies just use like random cases or like random track record that they like didn't work with or worked with like a long time ago. Secondly, I would want to make sure that they have some level of like expertise that they can show you, right? They can either directly tell you like an action plan, or they have like a really solid ideas from the get-go and they can tell you what specifically they're going to do for you, right? If I'm working with someone, I want to have the understanding that they're an absolute expert in the field, right? I just recently onboarded like an email marketer like 2 months ago, and like in the like sales call we had, he already had like the welcome series where he told me like, hey, I did an analysis of like your ICP, of your brand, of your positioning. These are like the emails that I would propose to you. And I just had like a really quick, solid understanding that he's an expert and he knows what he's talking about, right? And that's essential for me if I'm going to engage someone. And then lastly is obviously the offer. So what are they offering you? What do you need to do in-house? Or is it like 100% done for your service? And basically what bang are you getting for your buck? Yeah, those are like the most important things that I would take into place. For us, just to round up on that, we are somewhat boutique, so we never scale past a certain number. So we are always staying around like 25 to 30 brands. So we also like are at the point that we have to kind of check like which we can onboard, and we also have like a certain entry barrier and stuff. But yeah, that's basically how I would choose an agency.
I think the ideas thing is big. You know, if they need to survey customers to even have an idea of what to roll out as their first test, and they can't just kind of instantly say that looking at your website, probably not the right person. The other thing I do, and correct me if this is kind of a wrong approach, Carl, and this would piss you off if someone came and did this. You know, I kind of put a demand that some test has started running, you know, maybe even 2 in a certain period, just because there is that learning stage and that implementation stage where a lot of them kind of drag their feet. Is that something you would agree on relatively quickly, like when the first test is going to get kicked off, or is there lots of variability within that?
I mean, yes, in terms of like execution wise, I would definitely say that they need to have something live in the first month, if possible, in like the first 2 to 3 weeks. So for example, we had this process in like 2021 and like early 2022 that Davie just mentioned, where we would do like the whole data deep dive, and then like after 6 to 8 weeks we would then push the first test live. And then at some point we were like, wait, this is taking way too much time, and doing this like whole data deep dive and analysis and questions and surveys and everything, we could already be testing something and like getting some results. So we then switched it. So we pushed like the first test live after 2 weeks after kickoff. And I mean, this is pretty state of the art, but I would still, if you talk to somebody, expect them to at least have it live after like 3 to 4 weeks, because everything further down the line, I would then question like what they are doing in the first weeks before that. So I would definitely side with you on that opinion.
Yeah, I love it. The one thing that agencies often do is a major test and minor test agreement. So they're like, we'll do 2 minor tests a month, 1 major test a month. I'm kind of a bit torn about how this all works, because, you know, I just want major tests like for a very, very long time. Like, I don't even want you to waste your time. I'd rather you do like 1 huge test initially, especially if it's going to move the needle. So like, what are your thoughts on just like managing agents? One, like on that major and minor test, is that a good structure? And do you do that? And yeah, just like managing their incentives as well and aligning it with yours.
Good question. I don't have this definition of like major or minor test, so to speak. For me, it's just a test, right? And for me, like the number one North Star metric is that this test is either going to increase conversion rate or average order value. If it doesn't have the goal of doing that, then I wouldn't test it, right? Because like, why are you wasting your time on doing something that's not going to make you more money? In terms of aligning the expectations or the outcomes, I would set certain goals and certain KPIs for them to achieve, right? So for example, over this time period, I expect you to get me this much in additional revenue, which is then having a certain ROI on the investment that I'll make with you, and which is going to leave me with a certain amount of revenue and profit that's take home for me after I pay you guys. So this is pretty much what I would look into. And this is also how we structured with like all of the brands that we have, right? That we pretty openly talk about all of this stuff in terms of like ROI, margins, profits and stuff, just so the deal makes sense for both sides. And this is B, also how I structure all of the deals with the agencies that I have, just so the incentives are aligned. So for example, with the email marketer that I talked about, or with other people that I have in my business, it's like the North Star metric is clearly defined, and mostly they are being paid in relation to like what they get me in terms of the outcome that matters most for me, which is 99% of the time more revenue, right? So this is like the conversation that I want to have in the first place. And in the first like one or two conversations, the agency should pretty directly and transparently let you know what they can achieve if they onboard you, right? If they don't have an understanding, or if they cannot make a projection for like your business case or based on like your brand and the data that you have, then it's probably not a good partner, because they seem to not have enough historical cases and data to be able to project what they can achieve for you over the next couple of months.
I think that's probably one of the most important things that we talked about, everybody today, is aligning that revenue objective within the contract and the expectations. In my experience, that's going to separate the weak from the strong when picking these agencies. They'll probably be terrified when you say it if they're a really bad agency. So yeah, check that out. Is there any other mistakes in hiring agencies?
Yeah, I just remembered like one red flag is an agency can promise you a certain like additional revenue. That's basically the only thing that they can promise, because that's like the only attributable and like trackable thing. If an agency says, I'm going to increase your conversion rate by 20%, I'm going to increase this by a certain percentage amount, like that's a red flag, just because nobody can promise that, because the conversion rate is dependent on much more factors that are outside of the agency's ownership. For example, if you were to completely switch all of the creatives, or if you were to increase the TikTok spend a lot, then the overall conversion rate would change or go down, right? Or maybe even go up. So that's like one really important thing, that there's not like a current situation and desired situation. An agency cannot say you're at 4% now, we're going to take you to 5 over like a year, just because that's impossible for them. And that's also based on like a lot of like different factors from, for example, your paid efforts.
Yeah, that is such a common misconception that people have. Even everybody converts at like 2.5 to 4.5 depending on what region it is, and people are like, oh, we got a better conversion rate than you. It's just like, yeah, but how much traffic are you actually driving to it? I want my conversion rate to be as low as possible, driving as much traffic to it as possible, finding it profitable. So I think that's a really good takeaway as well. Any other mistakes or learnings on the agency hiring side?
I think those are the biggest ones. I mean, if you guys have specific questions that I didn't mention, feel free to put them in the chat in terms of going for an agency.
We've got 7 more minutes. Oh, just some really cool things that you've seen and tested. I know it might not work for people, but like, just give them a couple of tests that they can roll out, whether it be maybe just like not an ad tutorial where they got to build it out, because a lot of people haven't even done that yet. But like something that they could do with their Shopify page, even if there's some Oodie stuff that you do, feel free to be completely transparent and give some people some testing pipelines.
Yeah. Okay, appreciate it. Some general things. A really great thing is everything around the offer. So especially like the price, right? Just come up with like 3 different price points. Let's say it's $60 right now, then test like $50 and $70, right? to kind of find the price elasticity point where you can keep the conversion same or even have more conversions. Sometimes if you increase prices, conversion rate is even going to increase, which seems contradicting, but it's just the case because then the perception is different. So price is a big one. Copywriting is another big one. So making sure that from like the angles and the creatives that get the most paid media spend, it's a congruent copywriting and angle to like the product page, homepage, or wherever you push your traffic to, just because that's sometimes different. One thing that I ran with Matt, I think like last year was to test different landing pages for like different traffic sources, right? So one thing for the Oodie was from the organic Instagram traffic to, instead of pushing that to the regular homepage, pushing that to like a listicle page. So like instead of the regular homepage where they would directly see products, the organic Instagram traffic would be pushed to the page that just said, here are 5 reasons why over 1 million people love the Oodie, right? And then it would just talk about how great the product is, and it would show them a bunch of happy people. And then on the bottom of the page, it would then have a call to action to then go to the product page. And the idea was that for the organic Instagram traffic, right, they would, for example, see an ad, they would check out the Instagram, they would first be like warmed up, and they would increase the trust before we pitch them anything or show them anything. So those are also really great tests that you can do in the beginning, is trying to understand like what awareness stage is the prospect in, and what would you need to show them, right? Sometimes it's better to like take the time to warm them up first or build the trust before you pitch, or everything around like customer journey are also like good tests. So for example, also test sending traffic to a homepage versus directly sending traffic to a product page, right? Those are like really big changes that you can easily make without having to completely design something or completely develop something, that are still going to have a good effect.
Yeah, I think they're really good. The other things that we've found at the Oodie is, this will just apply to everybody, is just anything above the fold. You don't need a split test your accordion at the bottom, your FAQs. It's just like barely any of the traffic's getting down there, and clarity is going to show you that. So just prioritizing above the fold, which is most likely going to be your product images as well, is a big one. Anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Let me think. I really like the 2 ones that you've just mentioned above the fold, product images, especially product images. I really like that. Let me think. I mean, something like out of the box, and this bases a bit on the product image side. Like for this is probably also like the most actionable step for like everyone listening. Like you don't want to like over complex CRO or like make it too like weird or too gross or something. You just have to like sit down and imagine what the person is going through when they're going through your website, right? It makes it a bit difficult nowadays because everything we do is sitting in front of our computers, and then we build something and then we push it out, and then we see like the KPIs on our dashboard, but we don't see the actual people going through that anymore, right? We don't see the people that see your ad. We don't see the people that go through the website. But with whatever you do, like try to have the person in mind when you're doing it, right? In terms of like, how is this going to affect what they're thinking? How is this going to affect what they're feeling? In terms of, you just mentioned product images, how is it going to affect the person if I show somebody smiling on the product images wearing the Oodie, for example, right? Like those are like really logical things or like really easy things, but sometimes your mind is like so crowded because you've seen so much stuff online, or like so much like hacks or tactics or something, that you forget about that, right? But like if you just try to remember that, or try to be in this state of mind with like anything you do for like the ads or the website, that's going to make a lot of stuff a lot easier for you.
The other thing is, don't assume. You look at your brand in a completely different way to everybody else. Everybody else doesn't care about you. Like even the brand that you love more than anything in the world, like that's like 1/1,000,000th compared to like the people working within that business and how they feel about the brand, because they look at it every single day. We, for the Oodie, we were like, it says one size fits all everywhere, and we just thought it was obvious. But the main objection was like, I'm scared it's not going to fit me. And it was such a big, such a powerful survey question that then they just pulled out all of the one size fits all and just made it so much clear with plus size models and stuff like that it was going to fit them. And that had a big uplift as well. So yeah, really go back to the visual models, and this is where Facebook comments and surveys and stuff like that actually really are helpful as well. Cool. So I just wanted to check, like, what are your current rates? Actually, I've just got one question. We've covered the trades out at the start, but I thought this was interesting. Like, is there any countries that you have seen CRO be really great for, like hiring on Upwork? I know media buyers, if I see a media buyer from Croatia, I'm going to jump at that. They're awesome. But yeah, like, have you seen kind of any overlap there in terms of regionality?
I mean, for like technical things, I'm on the exact same page than you are, right? Like I'm in love with like Eastern European talent when it comes to data, when it comes to technical things. We have like most of our data analysts and developers are like Eastern European countries, also like Ukraine or Bulgaria, just as you mentioned, Croatia. Like those are like the Eastern European talent is different for everything that's like analytical and technical. For marketing, copywriting, psychology, and everything, we haven't found like one location that like beats all the others. We have a handful of German people. We have a couple of people even in like the Southern Europe. So, for example, like Spain or France. It's more of like a what can I say, like a profile, right? Like, what are those people like? Can they put themselves into the shoes of others? Do they have a good understanding? Do they have like a really solid empathy? And all of that stuff. So it's more of like a profile of the person rather than like the geo when it comes to these like CRO worlds for me.
I think that somewhat rolls out Asia for a lot of these roles, because the way they consume and communicate is very different. Like, I've seen charts of like what countries are most like the United States. Let's say you're selling there. China is obviously the end of that. So I think, yeah, being able to put yourself into the consumer's mind, if they're not even using that type of product, how are they supposed to do that? So I think that makes a lot of sense. Interesting you said Spain. So yeah, so tell us a little bit about your agency if anyone that wants to reach out, apparently what you're charging. Do you want to leave that kind of open-ended and we can just intro you to people if they're like what you've said today?
Yeah, so for us, like the entry barrier is at least $1 million a month. Before that, we don't really talk to people. I mean, I'm obviously happy to share value with you guys on the call, even if you're below that. But for us to think about a partnership has to be like $1 million a month or more. We charge around like 10 to 15K a month, and we also, for like any project we take on, we make like a business case validation beforehand. So we will look at like the data at the revenue levels and like what we can achieve. And if we are confident that we can achieve like a multiple X return on whatever we're charging, then we're going to make an offer.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you joining. I'll just stop the recording so I can